Here at Baylor University for journalism, PR, and new media. First, when did you get into journalism?
Well, it's interesting. In the fifth grade, we had a mimeograph. You don't even know what a mimeograph machine is.
No.
Very old fashioned way of duplicating material back before Xerox and, and photocopy machines came along. That got dark. Is that okay?
Oh, yeah,
Okay.
it's fine.
Um, anyway, back in the fifth grade, we had a mimeograph newspaper, and a different student got to take turns every month being the editor. And I got to be the editor one month, and I absolutely loved it and decided I wanted to go into journalism. And in the seventh grade, I worked on my school newspaper, and then again in high school. And I knew when I got to college I wanted to major in journalism.
Why did you get into journalism?
I like the idea of being able to gather information and then share it with other people. And I look at journalism as a calling. I don't look at the same way as banking or plumbing or being an accountant. Not that there's anything the matter with those professions; they're noble. But I think what we do in journalism is such a service to the public, and on a much bigger scale in a democracy. A free press is essential to make it all work, make all of us informed. Because if you don't have informed citizens, you can't have people making good decisions and helping to run the country.
Yeah. Who influenced you into this career?
Well, it's interesting. I had my high school journalism teacher was she didn't have any children, and she looked at all of us on the staff in many ways as her children. She was an inspiration to me. And then when I got to college, I had a couple of really fine professors. And then my first job out of college at a newspaper, the Night City editor was a woman, and I learned so much from her. You know, it's interesting. I don't think anybody in this day and age could really relate to this, but she graduated from college about the time World War II was ending. There weren't a lot of opportunities for women in journalism then. She was very successful at it, and I don't think she probably ever made more than $250 a week. But she was so good at what she did, and she never got rattled, and she was as fine an editor, and I mean somebody, a wordsmith editor, as anybody I've ever worked with. And she could make such good suggestions without making you feel like either, oh my gosh, I'm in the wrong profession, this is so bad, or to be insulted to think that, well, I thought I did the very best I could on this, but she always figured out a way to make it better.
That's great. What are your favorite magazines / newspapers to read?
We subscribe to both the Waco Tribune-Herald and the Dallas Morning News at home. I'm a news junkie. I try and keep up on with what's going on. I look at the New York Times website. We have access to the New York Times here in the department. I try and read it as much as possible and encourage students to read it. I look at several websites daily. Not only websites that have journalism news on them, journalism business news, but then also kind of some of the fun ones like the Daily Beast, where where you can get a lot of gossip kind of news as well as some of the major headlines.
That's great. How do you think journalism has changed over the years?
Oh gosh. When I was first coming up, there were newspapers were pretty gray. There wasn't as much in the way of graphic arts or photography. When USA Today was invented back in the early 1980s, I'd say USA Today really revolutionized the way that newspapers appeared. They came up with that great big color map of the United States. Then USA Today is an interesting newspaper. It's designed for people who move, which is, we're a very mobile society, and most people don't live the same place where they grew up, or they move multiple times. So it's a very easy way, both in the sports section and in the news section, to go and find the little blurb from each of the 50 states about something going on in the news or something going on in sports. And then people who travel. If you try and take the Sunday New York Times, which is about this thick, with all of your other carry-on luggage, it can be tough. But USA Today is a very thin newspaper, and it was designed for people who were traveling or who had moved from someplace else. So, I mean, they made jokes when it first came out about, well, we'll give a Pulitzer Prize for paragraph writing because it was the articles were very short. Newspapers and the news business has changed from the standpoint that there used to be great big newspapers with big news holes and lots of advertising, and we've had a communication revolution. The first one was when Gutenberg invented movable type, and then the second one back in the 1800s when the linotype machines and the, oh my gosh, let me see if I can remember this from journalism history, the Howe double octuple rotating press, which allowed for lots of newspaper pages to be run in a hurry, and that allowed for a pretty quick dissemination of information. But if you think about it, it wasn't until the computer generation, which certainly came about after I graduated from college and in my lifetime, linotype operators, that people actually sat at a linotype machine and typed, and about the fastest that you could send news or information across an AP wire or United Press International wire was about 66 words a minute with accuracy, so you weren't having a lot of mistakes. And now when you think about high-speed data transmission where you're sending literally millions, sometimes trillions of characters a second, it really is just mind-boggling.
So journalism definitely has changed a lot, you'd say.
Oh, yes, yes. The delivery platform has changed because of the communication revolution, what the internet has allowed people to do. You know, there wasn't any referendum that said, okay, we'll give you a choice. You can get your newspaper at home on your front step, or you can go to a computer and do it. But when they figured out that it was a lot less expensive to deliver the news online, that was pretty much the day. And the last major change that I would say in news has been within the last 5 years when we had such a really devastating economic downturn, and it had a huge impact on the advertising business and the advertising dollar, and newspapers shrunk. Lots and lots of journalists got laid off. Last week, or week before last, the Chicago Sun-Times announced it was laying off its entire photo staff, which I find that devastating.
Sorry.
No, I was just going to finish by saying they said we're going to give our reporters, we're going to ask them to shoot the video and shoot and edit the video and post it to the web as well as gathering the information. And I think those are two very different skill sets. I worked at a television station for 4 years during summers and holidays from when I was teaching. And I know on the assignments when I had to take the camera and shoot my own video, you think differently about gathering the information for the story. You're looking to make sure you have the video you need, and then oftentimes after the fact, then you're gathering up all the detailed information that you need. And those are two very different things. So that's a tough thing. But if you think about how news appears on a website, pictures aren't large unless you devote the entire screen to a picture, and I don't think that's going to happen much. And so if you're talking about in essence, a one column wide photo, I can see why they're saying, why should we pay somebody a very good salary to do work that is going to appear in a very small size? But it makes me sick. I can't even fathom that newspaper did that. It's so sad.
That being said, do you think journalism is a good career to get into for someone, going
Yes.
to college or
Yes.
taking a major?
I've been doing summer orientation for the last 2 weeks, and I've been meeting parents and students, and the parents are saying, my son or daughter says they're interested in journalism, but that's a dead business, isn't it? I said, no, not at all. I mean, when you think about it, we're very much in an information society. And I think it's the delivery platform has changed. People aren't getting information out of a newspaper delivered to their doorstep at 6 o'clock in the morning so much anymore. Particularly young people your age do not read. You read, but you read in a different way. But I think we have, with as much proliferation of information as we have, it's absolutely essential that we have people who can synthesize that information and turn it into a cohesive, clear, interesting news story and share that information with somebody else. And also, I think we need people that you can trust and places that you can go that where you know that you're getting factual information, not somebody's opinion.
Exactly. Where do you think journalism is going, or will be in the next 5 years?
Well, I hope the economy recovers enough to the point that people are able to put some money back into it. You look at the major news stations, and they've had to close bureaus around the world, and too often they are literally flying and helicoptering, parachuting a journalist into some place where there's a major news story going on, as opposed to having had a bureau there and having people who are familiar with the city, with the political setup, the geography, all of those things. So I hope the economy gets better to the point where you're not worrying about who's going to get cut, whose job's going to get cut next. I'd like to see us get away from all the fluffy news that we're seeing and get back to a little bit harder news. There have been some pretty sobering news stories in the last couple of weeks, and I think people realize that more than ever we need people who can go out and dig and cover and learn. I mean, it's pretty astonishing when you think about this man who it's kind of mind-boggling to think that he was a high school dropout, a dropout from the Army. He started as a security guard, and the next thing you know, he had a fairly high-level job at the CIA, and then a very high-level job with a defense contractor, and was in a position to see some of the most sensitive secrets that the United States is supposed to be protecting, and then shared those with the world. Now, am I happy totally with the government and the secrecy of it? No, I think we need more transparency. But to think that somebody could do that is kind of mind-boggling. But I think when you take a news story like that, you realize that it takes a trained journalist to know where to go to ask the questions, who to ask the questions of, to have enough clout, and that's generally with a news organization, a respected one behind you, to be able to get an appointment with somebody high enough up in an organization to answer your questions. So I hope we go back to a little more serious approach to the news. I may be dreaming, but that's what we're training our students to do, is to be able to go out and dig and look for and find good news stories, and then present them in an intelligent, coherent, interesting fashion.
Now, what are your future goals, personally?
Personally, I would like to continue to see the journalism department grow. I would like to expand. I'd like to see our facilities expanded. We are bursting at the seams. I'd like to see our graduate program grow. I'd like to, one of the things, and I think this is an immediate need, is to come up probably through the Lariat with a newsroom, a converged newsroom, where we can actually have students shooting and editing video that we can then post to the web, along with the print news stories that we've traditionally had in the past. Since Baylor doesn't have an on-campus closed-circuit television station, I think that it's incumbent, and certainly employers are expecting students who graduate today to know how to shoot and edit both still and moving video, and write and do graphic design and do web work. I mean, you truly have to be a jack of all trades today and be very, very good at it in order to compete. So I think realistically, Baylor's not going to build an on-campus television station, but I think the university might not be at all opposed to us having a small news news studio that we could use for broadcast work, and the other area, it's a good place to start.
Lastly, how has social media impacted the field?
Oh gosh. How many tweets have you read today?
So true.
We used to have fairly lengthy investigative or in-depth news stories. Now we have 140 character tweets. And with Pinterest, it can be a picture, a photo. So it's a very condensed form of information exchange now. And so people don't have, one of the things I do worry about is, and I'm sorry, but all the people that tell me they can multitask and have no problem multitasking, I don't buy it for 1 second. I know from my own personal experience, I cannot do 2 things at once and do it well. I mean, try driving the car and texting. You're putting your life and somebody else's life at risk. And so somebody says, well, I can study and I can sit in a classroom and I can listen to my professor and I can do my email and I can check my phone messages and I can send a tweet or whatever. You can't, and you can't do it well. And so I worry about people not having powers of concentration, enough concentration to be able to think and absorb. I'm really kind of worried about critical thinking skills. I think that's an area where young people today, we have kids who want to be spoon-fed information. You know, they give me a long list of things that I can memorize for this test, but don't give me a problem that I have to solve. So that I have to think through and figure out for myself how to arrive at wherever I need to arrive at. So that's a challenge, but that's not just a challenge in the journalism department. I think it's a challenge in anybody's department. But since we're in the information business, I think it's one of the biggest challenges we have.
Do you think that social media is a positive or a negative for journalism, for journalists?
Well, it's both. It's a wonderful tool for gathering information in a hurry, for widening the horizon of people that you can look to and seek information from. So that's an upside. The downside is, well, I'll use it as an example. Matt Drudge, who puts out the Drudge Report, he says he's fine. It doesn't bother him if he doesn't have anything more than 75% accuracy with the information that he posts on his website. As a journalist, I find that abhorrent. I mean, we're not in the business of speculating or posting rumors or you can ruin somebody's reputation. Yeah. You can ruin so many things by printing or broadcasting or posting erroneous information. And depending on what that is, I mean, think about the picture of the 2 young men that was disseminated worldwide and said these 2 people had something to do with the Boston bombing, marathon bombing, and they had nothing to do with it. You can't put that genie back in the bottle. Yeah. And so on the one hand, for information gathering, that can be a wonderful tool. And you think about people in the Middle East, the Arab Spring, who live in countries with horribly repressive regimes in charge. It was a way to get information out about what was going on. So it was a wonderful tool in some instances. In others, to me, it's like noise. And with such a demand on your time. And I'm not particularly good at, I have this nifty thing on my computer that allows an email to pop up down in the bottom of the corner of the screen every time I get a new one. It's wonderful in a way, but it's really distracting in a way too. So I'm in awe of people like your aunt who use multiple forms of social media and do it very well.
Well, thank you for letting me talk to you.
You're very welcome. You're very welcome.
Hey, good job.